Members of the Fourth Estate, today Cabinet discussed a number of issues. The Minister of Health and Childcare, Honorable Dr. Douglas Mombeshora, updated Cabinet on the national cholera outbreak response. Cabinet wishes to inform the nation that during the period 5 to 11 March 2024, there were 894 new suspected cholera cases reported, and the implementation of a sound response strategy is part of government's program of action in order to ensure that we curb the cholera challenge. And a number of initiatives have been put in place in order to curb the challenges. This also includes raising awareness, which members of the Fourth Estate have been able to broadcast, to print, and also to publish across all provinces. An improved case management system modality, the establishment of oral rehydration points and cholera treatment camps, and the vaccination program, which is ongoing, targeting particularly hotspots. Going forward, Cabinet also resolved on the following measures in order to curb the disease outbreaks: the enforcement of on-site servicing of new residential areas or suburbs before residents take occupation of the houses, enforcement of the requirement for small-scale miners operating in mining areas to prioritize the provision of water and sanitation facilities in all mine compounds, enforcement of the removal of unregistered artisanal miners along the Mazoe River in order to avert further spread of the disease, the decommissioning of cholera treatment centers in areas where cases have reduced, and the redistribution of equipment to current hotspots, and the prioritization of the purchase of oral cholera vaccines to provide a second dose for districts that were targeted for the first campaign in order to ensure protection. The Minister of Public Service, Labour and Social Welfare, Honorable July Moyo, presented the State Party report to the African Union Committee of Experts on Children's Rights, which was approved by Cabinet. Government wishes to inform the nation that the report outlines the responses to issues raised by the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child as contained in the Zimbabwe's first periodic State Party report, which was submitted in 2022. The responses are a result of extensive consultations with various ministries, departments, and agencies, and convening of the full Interministerial Committee on Human Rights and International Humanitarian Law meeting, which validated the responses. The responses pertain to legislative, administrative, judicial, and other measures adopted by the country in order to ensure realization of children's rights. Highlights of the responses include the following: explanations on issues of non-discrimination, best interests of the child, the right to survival and development, and child participation. Clarifications on civil rights and freedoms, including the right to name, nationality, identity, and registration at birth. Shedding light on issues of health and welfare for children in Zimbabwe. Clarifications pertaining to education, leisure, and cultural activities, and addressing concerns on children in conflict with the law, children of imprisoned mothers and caregivers, as well as economic exploitation and child labor. Cabinet endorsed the responses by the Interministerial Committee on Human Rights and International Humanitarian Law, and these will be forwarded to the Committee of Experts. The responses show that Zimbabwe has made great strides in promoting and protecting the rights of children through the domestication and implementation of the African Charter on the rights and welfare of the child. Cabinet considered and approved the principles of the Standards Bill, which were presented by the Minister of Industry and Commerce, Honorable Mangaliso Ndlovu. Cabinet wishes to inform the nation that the Standards Bill will guide the development of standards and also the protection of safety, health, and the environment. The bill will create the Standards Institute of Zimbabwe, whose main mandate will be to develop, publish, and promote voluntary standards and quality assurance in industry and commerce. The bill will provide for the establishment of provincial standards committees, which will be entrusted with supervision, administration, and financial management functions in the provinces. The introduction of the standards law will help the country's exports through regulating the quality of goods and services under the Consolidated African Continental Free Trade Area market. Furthermore, the framework for the standards will be cascaded to all the country's provinces in order to support rural industrialization agenda through production of quality and competitive goods and services. Cabinet approved the establishment of the National Institutional Framework of the African Peer Review Mechanism as presented by the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, Honorable Dr. Frederick Shaba. The African Peer Review Mechanism, to which Zimbabwe assented to in February 2020, is a self-monitoring mechanism through which African Union member states voluntarily foster principles of good governance for political stability and socio-economic development. As a member of the African Peer Review Mechanism, Zimbabwe is mandated to establish national structures through which country assessments will be conducted. The structures will comprise the focal point, the National Governing Council, the Secretariat, and the technical research institutions. Cabinet has appointed the national structures as follows. Commissioner James Manzo is the national focal point who will represent the head of state and government as well as play a coordination role among government. The National Governing Council and the Continental African Peer Review Mechanism structures. Members of the National Governing Council who will be drawn from relevant government ministries, the academia, the media, civic society, organizations, the Parliament of Zimbabwe, and the private sector. The secretaries for provincial affairs and devolution will be the provincial focal points. A secretariat led by the acting secretary for foreign affairs and international trade, Ambassador Chikava, will be the interim chief executive officer of the African Peer Review Mechanism, and established universities and other institutions will constitute the technical research institutions. These will be appointed on an ad hoc basis. Cabinet approved the piloting of a targeted review of Zimbabwe under the thematic area, Economic Governance and Management, in order to prepare the country for a full African Peer Review Mechanism assessment. Cabinet considered and adopted the update report on the tobacco value chain transformation strategy, which was presented by the Minister of Lands, Agriculture, Water and Rural Development, Honorable Dr. A.J. Masuka. It will be recalled that the Tobacco Value Chain Transformation Plan was launched in 2021 in order to provide a roadmap for increasing production to 300 million kilograms annually and to enhance value addition and beneficiation from 2% to 30%, whilst building a $5 billion industry by the year 2025. The nation is informed that 98% of Zimbabwe's tobacco is exported to over 60 destinations, and over 52% of the tobacco is being grown by beneficiaries of the land reform program and is generating 54% of the annual value. Tobacco contributes substantially to economic development of the farmers, whose average gross earnings are over $7,000 annually per grower, focusing primarily on tobacco only. The nation is further informed that the number of growers has increased 17-fold since the commencement of the land reform program, indicating the success of the land reform program, with over 85% of the tobacco currently being grown by the smallholder farmers. The average yield has also increased since farmers have gained experience and are enjoying better agronomic support by merchants, and as well as a conducive policy environment and advisory role by the government of Zimbabwe. The average price paid to farmers has increased by 80% from the year 2000 to 2023, again attesting to better quality tobacco produced from experience that has been gained. The nation is further informed that the average price paid this year is 18.1% firmer than last year, and the average price at the auction floors is currently higher than that at contract sales, even as these are still early marketing days. The Tobacco Industry and Marketing Board is monitoring the situation together with the Tariff and Competition Commission, and the nation will be kept abreast of the developments on the subject. Cabinet would like to report that the value of local tobacco purchased has increased from $650 million to $897 million United States dollars in 2022 and 2023 respectively. Out of this amount, tobacco purchases utilizing local financing were $61.4 million in 2022 and $73.2 million for the year 2023. For the 2024 tobacco marketing season, the recorded intentions for local financing amount to $81 million. The nation is informed that there are opportunities to increase the level of value addition and beneficiation of tobacco into cut-rag and production cigarettes from 2% of total tobacco produced to 30%. Currently, 7 cigarette manufacturers operate in Zimbabwe with a combined production capacity of around 5 billion cigarette sticks per annum. An additional cigarette manufacturing plant is under construction with a current production of 1.6 billion sticks per year. The plant will increase capacity by 50% in the first half of 2024. Cabinet considered and adopted the update report on the preparations for the 2024 Independence Anniversary celebrations and the Children's Party, which was presented by the Honorable Vice President KCD Mohadi as the chairperson of the Cabinet Committee on State Occasions and National Monuments. The nation is informed that preparations for the 2024 independence anniversary celebrations and the Children's Party are progressing well, with road equipment having been mobilized from road authorities and private sector players in order to execute civil works. The main venue, as well as the Murambinda, Beshnaf, Chivunya, Zura and Wedza Mutueshiri roads, the works have commenced. The other road works undertaken include the grading of the access roads, the grading of the 8-kilometer Murambinda Marenga Junction roads, and the opening of access roads to the helipad. The nation is also informed that a total of 22 bores comprising 17 wet wells have been drilled in Buhera district towards preparations for the 2024 Independence Anniversary celebrations and the Children's Party. Furthermore, 2 bores will also be drilled at interpretive centers, namely the former Zapasi Assembly Point in Buhera and the Castle Camp in Rusape. Tree planting is ongoing at the school orchard and also on the general plantation area of 3 hectares, raising the total of the planted trees to 8,000. Cabinet considered and approved the memorandum on the ratification of the SADC protocol on industry, which was presented by the Minister of Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs, Honorable Ziambi, as the chairperson of the Cabinet Committee on Legislation. Cabinet reports that in 2015, the SADC industrialization strategy and roadmap was approved, and in 2018, the SADC protocol on industry was created in order to enhance implementation. The SADC protocol on industry is anchored on regional cooperation on industrialization through developing prioritized regional value chains, promoting the development of small and medium enterprises, and creating joint industrial enterprises, among other aspects. The nation is further informed that 16 SADC member states, including Zimbabwe, signed the SADC protocol on industry, which will enter into force 30 days after 2/3 of the member states have deposited their instruments of ratification. Cabinet wishes to inform the nation that ratification of the protocol will unlock significant economic opportunities for Zimbabwe through collaboration, resource access, and increased investment in vital areas such as research, infrastructure, and small to medium scale enterprises growth. Cabinet considered and approved the memorandum on the cooperation agreement between the Republic of Zimbabwe and the International Social Service Secretariat, which is based in Geneva, Switzerland, which was presented by the Minister of Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs, Honorable Ziambi. Cabinet reports that Zimbabwe had worked with the International Social Service in areas of inter-country child protection, refugee protection, and family welfare, but without a founding agreement. The agreement to be signed will establish the nature of the relationship that should exist between Zimbabwe and the international social services, based on the principle of reciprocity. The nation is advised that the desire to sign the agreement was informed by the need to protect Zimbabwean citizens or adopted children who may be ill-treated outside the country. Becoming a signatory of the International Social Service will cut the cost of managing related cases outside the country's jurisdiction. Cabinet considered and approved the memorandum on cooperation between the republics of Zimbabwe and Malawi, which was presented by the Minister of Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs, Honorable Ziyambi Ziyambi. The nation is informed that the main objective of the Memorandum of Understanding is to establish a legal framework for institutional relations on cooperation between the Republics of Zimbabwe and Malawi in the fields of labor and employment. The two countries have jointly decided that they will cooperate in the areas such as labor dispute resolution and social dialogue, labor law reform, social security, employment services, labor migration, occupational safety and health, and child labor. It is important to note that Zimbabwe has similar agreements with Botswana and South Africa in that the cooperation promotes exchange of technical expertise on policy development and program implementation. Cabinet considered and approved the MOU between the Republic of Zimbabwe and the Republic of Zambia in the fields of labor and employment, which was presented by the Minister of Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs, Honorable Ziyambi Ziyambi. The nation is informed that the main objective of the MOU is to establish a legal framework for cooperation between the Republic of Zimbabwe and the Republic of Zambia in the fields of employment, labor, and social welfare. The MOU also provides for the establishment of a joint committee whose responsibilities include coordinating, implementing, monitoring, and evaluating activities which are supposed to be carried out. Cabinet considered and approved the Memorandum on International Labour Organization Convention 190 on violence and harassment at the workplace, which was presented by the Minister of Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs, Honorable Ziyambi Ziyambi. Cabinet reports that Convention 190 was the first international treaty to recognize the right of everyone to a world of work free from violence and harassment, including gender-based violence and harassment. The convention was adopted on 10 June 2019 by the International Labour Committee of the International Labour Organization at the 108th session in Geneva and came into force on 25 June 2021. The nation is further informed that the governments that ratify the convention are required to put in place the necessary laws and policy measures to prevent and address violence and harassment at workplaces. The convention represented a historic opportunity to shape a future of work based on dignity and respect for all. Cabinet wishes to advise the nation that Zimbabwe is already complying with this convention. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister and Chair of this session. I now invite questions, observations from colleagues from the press. We'll start with the testimony, then we'll get the responses from Honorable Ministers and Secretary General. The last round of questions. Who is going to start? Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Chief. My name is Buhera from the Harare. The question is directed to the Minister of Industry and Commerce regarding to the standards view. My question is, in what way is the standards institution of Zimbabwe different from the standards association of Zimbabwe? In other words, will two exist independent of the other or complementary? What are the major essential issues? How are they different?
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Pastor Ngomo, freelance journalist. So my question is on the tobacco pricing. We briefly spoke to farmers last week when the marketing season was opened, and they were very much concerned about a decrease from the 85% forex, which they were paid last season, to 75%, which they are being paid currently. I wanted to check what informed the decrease of the forex payments to tobacco farmers.
Yes, the last one is down. Anyone? Well, the minister, maybe let's respond to those when we move to the next one.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chief Secretary. The first question. Ramaida Mruira from Herald wants to establish that by bringing on board the Standards Bureau, what are the effects? What is the difference in terms of the standards? Honorable Ndlovu, you can respond to that question.
Thank you, Mr. and Mr. Buhera for the question. The Standards Association of Zimbabwe, SADC, or SADC as popularly known, is established as a PVO, private voluntary organization, which has over time been filling the gap that was created by the non-existence of the state institution which regulates the voluntary standards through which the products that are produced in the country they need to comply. We have been working and we still are working very closely with Standards Association of Zimbabwe. In fact, they get a lot of support from the government, and it is in the pursuit of really aligning with regional and international practice that as a country we need to have the Standards Institute through which we can aggressively pursue issues to do with competitiveness as well as increasing the quality of our products, which I must highlight that Standards Association of Zimbabwe has been doing very well. And this process of giving a legal grounding of the institution will likely see most of what SADC is doing subsumed by Standards Institute of Zimbabwe. And being a PVO over time, it will be up to the originators of the PVO whether they want to continue as an advocacy institution or they would want to fall under the realms of SIZ. But generally, when you look at international standards, you find that almost every country has an institution established at law that is looking at the standards of that particular country. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Minister. The second question is coming from a freelance journalist, I believe. The tobacco marketing season has just started, but the reports that we have received from TIMB indicate that the price has actually increased. And we need to distinguish two markets. There are those who have been contracted by different merchants across the country and the auctions. The reports that we've received so far indicate that there's been an increase in terms of pricing But as government, we've also put in place structures to be able to supervise and continuously monitor the pricing trends. We've put in place TIMB to be able to monitor, and also we've put in place the competitions and pricing competition mechanism to be able to monitor the pricing models since the marketing has started. So we are very confident that the markets will provide better prices as we roll into this new marketing tobacco season. That's the indication. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Let's move to the last round of 3 questions. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chief Takuchi Mbakwe from Minar TV. My first question goes to, the Minister Dynamos regards the children's rights. Are we considering our own cultural values as we adopt these measures? We saw what happened when the new measures were put in schools, where corporal punishment was scrapped and we are seeing cases of abuse of teachers rising in government schools, which was something common in private schools. How are we also protecting our cultural values as we adopt these measures? And I know this is off script, but through you, Minister of the Information, just an update on the welfare of our citizens regards the food supply. Thank you.
Yes, any other question or observation from you colleagues? Yes.
Thank you very much, President. My question probably is directed to the Attorney General in respect of a SADC.
Continue.
It's in respect of a SADC protocol, whose effect will come into effect when it has been ratified, when all member countries or a certain threshold of member countries will ratify the protocol to. Because my question is, what mechanism to make a certain level to member countries have to ensure that the member countries indeed ratify so that they begin to enjoy the visit benefits of protocols? Because in the past we had such challenges where protocols are signed, but we have challenges of achieving the threshold, the required threshold for member countries to enjoy the benefits of such benefits. Thank you.
Yes, and the last question. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you, Chief Secretary. The first question is to Honorable July Moyo in terms of the cultural values in protecting the children's rights. That's the first question. And the second question also relates to the welfare of the citizens in terms of food supplies. So over to you, Honorable Moyo.
Thank you. I did not get the name of the from NRT. Thank you very much. I want to indicate that what we are ratifying or what we are telling the African panel of experts is questions that they asked, which were specific about issues that had been raised by civil society when we presented our report, the first report, when we signed the charter. And the specific questions that they raised did not include our cultural issues, but in our replies, we obviously base our replies are based on the constitution as well as statutes that we administer. The statutes that we administer are spread across many ministries, departments, and agencies of government. When it comes to what we have just quoted, we obviously update it all the time and say, as the president has said, when it comes to the discipline of our children, we have to be very tough and make sure that they are disciplined. And this is the message that the president has given to all sundry. And that's what I think our school system is now following. When it comes to other cultural values, such as the place of work, child labor, for instance, there are many issues that are raised on child labor, which do not take into account our cultural values. All of us grew up looking after cattle. All of us grew up going to the fields with our parents, and there's been an issue of whether we are using child labor, for instance, in tobacco or the tea industry. And the ILO conventions is against hazardous substances being used in front of children. And they, both the Ministry of Agriculture and ourselves in Labour, we do joint inspections to educate our people first, and secondly, to enforce if chemicals are used in such a way that it can damage our children. And we have done that in the tea industry, and we have done that in tobacco industry. And I can actually say there was a meeting of the Tobacco Trust, which is headquartered in Geneva, and there's members who are both growers, NGOs, and some experts from ILO, former members of the ILO from the labor side, and they came here, and we are talking about over 20 people who met in Zimbabwe and examined what we are doing here. They went to Gurube, they went to Rungwe, they went to Macheke, unannounced, to look at what we are doing. They have been told that children don't go to school, and they found the children were in school. And they looked at the chemicals that we use, and when we use them, and whether the children will be there, and they were satisfied. And we also are aware that there are people who want to use these issues for trade purposes, and has nothing to do with what we do. In the small-scale sector, which the report has indicated is now the major producer of tobacco or tea, for that matter, we take great interest because we want to educate our people to say this is different from you taking your children to weed in the fields of maize and other. But because of the use of chemicals, we teach them and we tell them how to do it together with the Ministry of Agriculture. So that's about our protection of the children. It cuts across many ministries, and we have replied comprehensively, working together. As to regard the food supply situation, I look after the food deficit households, and we are right now distributing food to households which are in deficit based on the agricultural production season of 2022-2023. That's what we are doing right now. In any year, even when we have bumper harvest, which we had last year, we have some households which are food insecure. And our studies that were done by the Food and Nutrition Council last year indicated that we still had 2.7 million people who were food insecure in many households. So we mapped and said which provinces are food insecure, and we gave them percentages of the households and the people who were food insecure by percentage. We disaggregated it to districts and further disaggregated it to wards. As you know, we had 1,000, at that time we had 1,957 wards, which have increased to 1,970 wards. And of those wards, excluding those in the urban area, because we have vulnerability assessment in the rural areas and in the urban areas. We are right now focusing in the rural areas, and we are saying that those who are food insecure and we have given them percentages, we go there and further disaggregate it to villages headed by village heads, and we give a number to a village. We say in this village, for now, because of the percentages, you will only be able to give an X number of people, say 8. I was in one district last week and at a village, and they were told to give only to 8 people. And in another village, they were given more. So it differs from village to village. And one would be interested to say, how do you end up with 8 people, especially when people are looking at what is happening in the fields today. And they start forgetting that, no, we are doing the assessment for last year. We have not done the assessment for now. But the villagers, I was quite surprised. They were able to do their job and produced the 8 who they thought in their area were the most vulnerable. And when they were asked to say what happened to some, he said they were able to argue to say these 8 are the best in terms of vulnerability. But we now are explaining to the people to say, yes, there is an El Nino-induced drought. This El Nino-induced drought is what we are beginning to assess once all the figures that are required from the Ministry of Agriculture, once they finished all the figures and they start telling us our deficit, in-country deficit, given our strategic reserves, given what the private sector was buying and importing, what is the deficit that will need to be imported. But for us in social welfare, that's not the issue. The issue becomes, so how much food will we need going into this part, the second half of this year, into next year until April? That's what we are now beginning to work with, and whether and how we are going to make sure that these communities are going to get food. But we want to assure the nation that using this drought or this food insecure people right now, we are prepared, as the president has directed, that nobody will die from hunger, and that all the 35,000 villages are going to be assessed, and we will see what percentages need food because of this food insecure. The El Nino-induced food insecurity. We also are using this opportunity, working together with the Ministry of Agriculture, to say, going forward, as the Minister of Agriculture has said, there are 3 types of droughts. Drought that is El Nino-induced, and it causes food insecurity. There is food insecurity which is caused by us as government if we have a wrong policy. The wrong policy that we were doing of saying even in Region 5, we give presidential inputs and we give them maize to grow, when we know that the food, the growth of maize in some of the regions is absolutely impossible. So why would we have a policy of giving them seed that we know will be attacked by drought perennially? So we have now changed. That's why in some areas we give traditional grains. And even in this El Nino-induced drought, you will see that those who grew traditional grains, Munga, Mafunde, Zio, they are doing better than those who grew maize. So that is second induced food insecurity by policy making. The third one is a household who know that they have been given seed to grow these traditional grains, but they are so much with the appetite to grow maize, and they go and buy maize seeds. And the Minister of Agriculture says a whole family goes and buys hunger by going to buy seed maize, which they know in their area will not do well. And that education is beginning to sink in areas that we are now visiting. But the bottom line is we will finish the input that we are doing, we'll finish it in May, this 2.7, and we think that will ramp up because going to June and going forward, all those who had good harvest will have run out because they were aiming that they will end up having a crop from this year season. So that is the preparation that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Moyo. The second question is related to the development of the SADC industrialization strategy and roadmap. What we need to focus on is the achievements that have been registered so far in terms of the implementation of the SADC industrialization strategy and roadmap, which was approved first in 2015. The second item to focus on is that the SADC protocol on industry was then developed, created in 2018. And this serves as a legal guarantor for the implementation of the SADC strategy in order to ensure that the goals are achieved. The third item is to indicate that so far, 6 member states have submitted their instruments of ratification, and these are Angola, Botswana, Lesotho, Seychelles, Mauritius, and Namibia. And in addition, today, the government of Zimbabwe managed also to approve through cabinet. So this is a journey that has been very successful. And also to indicate that the whole strategy is anchored on regional cooperation, industrialization, joint programs between the respective countries, the domestication and also expansion of value chains within the region. And at the same time, the focus on small to medium scale enterprises and also research. So significant progress has been registered from 2015 to date. Thank you.
Thank you very much, the Honourable Ministers, for responding to questions raised by the journalists. We have come to the end of this post-cabinet press briefing. Thank you very much for coming.